mushrooms are suddenly everywhere, in coffee, powders, even skincare. Here's the surprising part. Your body has a specific transport system whose main job is to pull one mushroom nutrient into your cells and hold onto it. That nutrient is L-ergothioneine. In this video, you'll learn what it is, how it works, how to get it from food, when supplements might make sense, and what the evidence really says. One change you can make today is simple. Put mushrooms on your grocery list and plan one mushroom-based meal this week. Safety reminder: talk with a qualified clinician before changing supplements or medications, especially if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, have a medical condition, or take prescriptions. So what is L-ergothioneine? Think of it like a rust-proofing compound your body can't manufacture but can import. It's a small amino acid-like molecule that contains sulfur, and sulfur compounds often help protect cells from wear and tear. When people say antioxidant, it can sound like marketing. Here are the practical basics. First, ergothioneine can help neutralize some reactive molecules that build up from normal metabolism, pollution, intense exercise, and just aging. Those reactive molecules are like tiny sparks that can nick your cell membranes and proteins. Second, it can help reduce metal-driven reactions. Iron and copper are essential, but when they're out of place, they can trigger more sparks. Ergothioneine can bind in a way that may calm that chain reaction.
The cool part is how your body handles it. Humans don't make ergothioneine. It's produced mainly by fungi and some bacteria. You only get it through diet, and you absorb it using a dedicated transporter, basically a VIP door in the gut and in many tissues. Once it's inside, the body tends to concentrate it in places that deal with a lot of stress, like red blood cells, the liver and kidneys, the eyes, and parts of the brain. That doesn't prove it prevents disease, but it explains why researchers take it seriously. Now let's get practical. Where do you find it? The biggest source is mushrooms. In many diets, mushrooms provide most of the ergothioneine people get. Even regular white button or cremini mushrooms help, and varieties like oyster, shiitake, maitake, porcini, king oyster, and lion's mane are often higher. A realistic food target is about 80 to 100 grams cooked per serving, roughly 1 cup cooked, about 3 ounces. Aim for 2 to 4 servings per week. That single habit does more than any complicated supplement strategy. If you want it to be easy, sauté mushrooms with olive oil and salt and add them to eggs, rice, noodles, tacos, or a sandwich. Roast them until browned for a meatier flavor. If you dislike the texture, chop them very fine and mix them into ground meat, lentils, or pasta sauce. One absorption and cooking tip: ergothioneine is very water-soluble, so boiling mushrooms and dumping the water can wash some away. If you boil, keep the broth, like soups and stews. For a side dish, quick sautéing, roasting, steaming, or microwaving tends to keep more in the part you eat. Non-mushroom sources exist, but they're usually smaller. Some fermented foods, like tempeh, can contain it, and smaller amounts can show up in some beans, oats, asparagus, and organ meats, like liver and kidney. Helpful, but mushrooms are the main lever.
Now, supplements. When do they make sense, and what's realistic? Food is usually enough if you can tolerate mushrooms and you eat them regularly. Supplements make more sense if you never eat mushrooms, you can't be consistent with food, or you want a steady dose similar to what's been used in human studies. Most supplements are plain L-ergothioneine. Look for a label that lists L-ergothioneine clearly and gives an exact amount in milligrams. Be cautious with mushroom blends that don't tell you how much ergothioneine you're actually getting. A conservative adult dose to start is around 5 to 10 milligrams per day. Studies commonly use 10 to 25 milligrams per day, and some products go to about 30 milligrams per day. More is not automatically better, because we don't have strong long-term outcome data. Start low, give it a few weeks, and evaluate whether it's worth continuing. Timing is simple: once per day, and with food if your stomach is sensitive. Ergothioneine tends to build up over time, so consistency beats perfect timing. Cost varies, but a 10 to 25 milligram per day routine often lands somewhere around $15 to $40 per month. If that feels high, remember that mushrooms a few times per week is often the best value. So who should pay attention? There's no official ergothioneine deficiency disease, no recommended daily allowance, and most doctors don't run a standard ergothioneine test, so you're not looking for a classic deficiency symptom list. Instead, think in terms of risk of low intake. If you rarely eat mushrooms, your intake is likely low. If you're older, especially over about 60, levels can be lower on average in research. If you have gut conditions that affect absorption, or you've had bariatric surgery, it's reasonable to discuss your overall nutrition strategy with your clinician. Here's a quick self-check. In the last 2 weeks, how many times did you eat mushrooms in a real portion? If it's 0, your intake is probably very low. If it's 2 or more, you're already doing the main thing. Labs to discuss with your doctor. Ergothioneine itself is usually only available through specialty or research testing. Practically, it's smarter to make sure the basics are solid first, like iron status, B12, vitamin D, and kidney and liver function when appropriate, because those have clear clinical playbooks.
3 quick personas to make this real. If you're on a tight budget, skip the supplement and buy the cheapest mushrooms you can find. Aim for 2 servings per week. If you're vegan or plant-based, rotate different mushrooms and consider fermented foods like tempeh, but make sure you're covering essentials like B12. If you're worried about brain aging, remember the heavy hitters are sleep, movement, blood pressure, and an overall diet pattern. Ergothioneine can be a supportive layer, not the foundation. Now the evidence reality check. What's strong is absorption and safety signals. Ergothioneine uses a specific transporter, and supplementation reliably raises blood levels in humans. Short-term studies suggest it's generally well tolerated at common doses. What's mixed is whether it consistently improves outcomes like memory, sleep, skin, or energy, because trials are still limited and often short. What's early is long-term disease prevention. Observational studies show interesting links. For example, a Swedish cohort of a little over 3,000 adults, followed for about 2 decades, found that higher blood ergothioneine was linked with lower cardiovascular risk and lower mortality. That's an association, not proof. On the trial side, one randomized study followed 147 adults aged 55 to 79 with subjective memory complaints for 16 weeks. People took 10 or 25 milligrams per day, blood levels rose a lot, and the main memory score did not clearly beat placebo over the full study, though some secondary measures showed small signals. Another small pilot trial in mild cognitive impairment, only 19 participants, used 25 milligrams 3 times per week for a year and reported improvements on a learning test and a more stable nerve injury marker. Promising, but too small to treat as a final answer. Bottom line, the science is interesting, but it's still maturing. Food habits are the safest bet while we wait for bigger trials.
Now, safety and interactions. Most people do fine. The most likely side effects are mild stomach upset, nausea, loose stools, or headache, especially if you start high or take it on an empty stomach. Less common is rash or itching. Serious red flags are swelling of the lips or face, wheezing, or trouble breathing, which need urgent care. Interactions are not fully mapped, so be cautious if you take multiple medications or medications with narrow dosing windows. If you're on metformin, gabapentin, or you're under oncology care where antioxidant supplements are discouraged, ask your clinician before starting. If you have kidney disease, also check first. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, avoid starting supplements unless your clinician recommends it, because human safety data is limited. For kids, mushrooms as food are fine for most, but supplements should be a pediatric conversation. Myth-busting lightning round. 1. It's not just a random antioxidant. Your body has a dedicated transporter for it. 2. You don't need fancy powders. Grocery store mushrooms count. 3. More is not always better because long-term outcome data is limited. Let's wrap up. Ergothioneine is a diet-derived compound mainly from mushrooms that your body actively absorbs and concentrates. You don't make it yourself. The best evidence supports absorption in short-term safety, while benefits for specific outcomes are still mixed and early. Your action today is simple. Plan 2 mushroom meals this week, aim for about 80 to 100 grams cooked per serving, and cook them in a way that doesn't dump the cooking water. If mushrooms are a no-go, consider a conservative supplement dose, like 5 to 10 milligrams per day, and run it by your clinician if you take medications. Share your experiences in the comments, and let us know what supplement you would like to learn about next.